I've been knitting for nearly 10 years. Long enough time that I have heard phrases such as, wow, the stuff you make is amazing. You could make so much money if you sold that. Oh my god, that looks so professional. People would totally buy this. And sometimes I simply get comments saying things like, do you sell this on my YouTube videos? And my answer is always, no, I do not sell my knits. The truth is, I have made 3 commissions in the past of people that I know who have asked me to knit something for them and paid me for it. I don't think I would take another commission, and the last one was almost 2 years ago, and I'm not really interested in finding more at the moment. So why? Why do I not want to make that into a business? Why do I not see what people are telling me that they see in my stuff? Why do I always just say no, especially to strangers? And I know a lot of you, if you are watching and you are a knitter, I've probably heard something similar before. I know that a lot of knitters, crafters, crocheters, etc. out there actually sell their stuff at things like craft markets or Christmas markets or local markets, things like that. Some of them even online. And I totally respect people that decide to do that with their time. But I personally, a long time ago, decided that that's not something that I was interested in. For me, the content creation thing that I do is as much as a business as I would make it to be. And to be honest, in 2024, I made all of like $400 in YouTube, which it's clearly not enough for me to quit my full-time job and dedicate myself fully at this. So most of it is just like from the goodness of my heart, the enjoy that I get out of it, and not really for some sort of monetary reason. The truth is that the idea of turning something that I enjoy doing, an activity that I do for pleasure, into something that turns into a business, turning my hands into like a production machine of just whipping out a certain type of thing, whatever it is, like sweater, a pattern, a hat, anything like that, it's just so not appealing to me for many reasons. One of them is simply that I barely ever knit the same thing more than once, maybe twice. I don't enjoy repeating patterns. I enjoy trying new patterns, trying new knits, trying new things. So the idea of knitting 100 hats that are all the same, different colors or something, is just sounds terrible to me. But more than anything, I think to me it's a little sad that people can't see that if you have an activity, a hobby, a craft, something that you enjoy to do, sometimes that's enough. That's all you need. You don't even have to be good at it. You just have to enjoy it. Like, it's something that I want to do with my time just because I like to do it, and I don't want to gain anything else out of it other than my own enjoyment. And that kind of breaks some people's brains, especially if they don't craft or do any sort of activity like that. And I would apply that to other things like painting or some other type of art, playing music. It can be a little hard to explain for someone who doesn't see it that way, especially in such a capitalistic society in which we are expected to turn anything that we enjoy or are good at into some sort of business and get something out of it that is monetary or has monetary value. If people tell me that I am good at knitting, or if I've noticed, because I have noticed my skills getting better or my knitting getting more complicated and things like that, I think that's an intended consequence of, because I enjoy something, I do it a lot, and the more I do it, the better I get at it, just like with anything else. I am honing my skill, but I'm not doing it with the end of somehow exploiting that. I'm only doing it because I want to. Like, that is the real response about why I don't want it to be a business. I don't want it to stop being enjoyable. I don't want it to become a job. I want it to be because I want to. And if I want to stop, I can stop. And if I'm tired and I don't feel like doing it, or if I hurt my arm and I can't do it, nothing happens. It's just, I can stop at any point. It is literally just because I want to do it, not because I have to. And I really think that people come from a good place or are well-meaning when they say compliments such as like, that looks so professional, you could sell it, or like, oh my god, you would make so much money out of it, things like that. I think they come from a good place. It's some sort of compliment, very capitalistic compliment, and I try to take it as that, and I usually just say something like, nah, I'm not really interested in doing that. and not elaborate too much. But inside, what I really want to say is to people is like, I wish you'd understand that you can do things just for the heck of it, just because, that you don't have to tell me that something looks good enough to sell for me to appreciate how good the thing that I made actually is. Now, if I'm completely honest, another reason that I don't even consider turning my knitting into a business is because I don't think people would actually buy it. I think that's not true, and I will explain to you why. We currently live in a world of fast fashion. We live in a world where everything's free shipped to you, everything's fast, the materials are cheap, things are cheaply made, and people don't care, and they pay very little. We're used to paying very little for our clothes. Even me, myself, who try to stay away out of fast fashion, honestly, probably would not feel comfortable paying what things actually would be worth, because they would be way more. And that's why I myself turned to secondhand fashion way more than new, because I don't feel comfortable with how things are produced. But that is my personal opinion, and also because I make things myself, so I know like what it takes to design something and all the process, you know, that comes behind a single garment. So I can't even imagine like a whole industry, and therefore I don't think that the value of things that we own is the actual value of objects. And also that sometimes it is because it's the quality is so low and people are not used to like paying for quality. And knitting is like the complete opposite of that. You know, the whole thing about knitting is not just the time that you're spending making it, but also you put effort into the materials that you put into it. You're making every single stitch, so you know like how much you're putting yourself into it. Like you're hand making every single stitch. You're not using a machine at any point other than the needles. That has worth. And I'm not saying that fast fashion or things made with machine are worthless. They're still, you know, made by people, but it is definitely very different than something that was handmade. I think the value of that is so much higher, and I would feel bad devaluing my time and my work that I put into handmaking something just so that people would buy it. I will say that the phrase of like, you should sell that is not one of the most, it is one of the most common phrases, but it's not the number one phrase that I hear. The number one thing that people ask me when they find out that I knit something is, how long did that take you? And they always want to know, like, okay, but how long did it take you? And even if I say, I don't know, because I maybe track my stuff on Ravelry, but I don't, you know, I don't sit myself with a chronometer. I don't, you know, check in and out of knitting and count exactly how many hours I spent on every single project. Like, nobody does that. That would be insane. So I don't actually know how long things take. And if you are like me, you probably also don't even have one project at a time. I don't have one project at a time. And sometimes I start working on a project and then I start working on something else, and the first project just sits there. So if I put on Ravelry that it took me 5 months, it's probable that 2 of those months I didn't even touch it. So it's really hard for me to tell you because I don't know. And so when people, when they ask that, they want to know. And if you say, I don't know, it's like, usually they push. And then you have to make something up and say, I don't know, like 3 months maybe. And no matter what number I say, they're always shocked. And that's so funny to me because, like, of course it takes a long time. It's handmade. I'm making one stitch at a time. I'm not a machine. My goal is not to become the fastest knitter in the world. Like, I don't want to do it so fast so that I can move on to the next thing. And I think that's the biggest thing that people don't realize, is that the pleasure is not just on finishing and having an object that you have finished, but it's also the process itself. And we all get to the point when you're almost to the end and you're like rushing because you want to finish and you're excited to get done, or maybe sometimes you even get tired of a project and you just want to be done with it. Thing that you're making, it's also about how you get there. It's like the whole process is an adventure. That is the fun part. So yes, if it took me 3 months, that's 3 months that I enjoyed making this thing. And then at the end of it, I had something to wear, and I will wear it for years, hopefully. So knitting is just the gift that keeps on giving. And it's not about how fast can I do it and oh my god, that took so long, how do you even do that? It's about like, no, things take however long they take, and I enjoy the process. Usually. So going back to actually selling something, you would think that once people realize like, oh wow, it takes a long time to make something, they would be like, okay, that is more valuable. I would pay more money. Or maybe they do think that, but more money made for them probably means like, well, I'll pay you instead of $20 for a sweater that I could find on a store for very, very cheap, fast fashion. I will pay you $200. And that may seem reasonable in your head, but I'm going to show you why that actually doesn't even get close to the value of something handmade. Ultimately, I think the price of handmade objects is priceless. I don't, budget like, okay, I'm gonna make a hat for someone that's worth this much. Like, no, it's a priceless thing. Part of the value is because a person made it for you or for themselves, and they went to the process of like doing things like choosing what yarn they're gonna use and what colors, and choosing a pattern and following the pattern and making mistakes and starting over and all of that stuff, like all the process that goes within it, that you can't really measure that. But just for the sake of argument and fun, I'm going to try to put a price to something that I actually have made and show you how I don't think anyone would actually pay what it is worth. One of my most popular videos, if you haven't seen it, is a video of a project that I made last year, which is this sweater vest for men that I made in color work. And most importantly, I was kind of recreating a historical vest. You can watch that video and know everything about that project. If I were to try to sell this or make more or just sell the one that I made, I try to figure out, okay, how much would that actually cost? And starting with the materials, I use 100% wool from Knit Picks. Knit Picks Palette was the yarn's called. And at the time, I remember they were having a really huge sale. It was like up to 60% off. So I did not pay full price for this yarn. I ended up buying about 9 skeins or balls of yarn of different colors. I think it was up to like 6 different colors and like different numbers of skeins per total 9. So that meant that I paid around, with taxes, $50 for all the materials, which is really cheap, I will say. It's really cheap for a knitting project. It just happened to be that way because of the yarn that I chose. But I've paid way more than that for other projects, like over $100 just for the materials to begin with. But let's just say, for the sake of this argument, it was $50 for the yarn. Now that's just the yarn, and I can't just charge the price of the yarn, because then like I am losing money, right? Because there's all the time that I invested in actually making this thing, my time, my value of my work. Because buying just the yarn, it's like buying the ingredients for a cake. It doesn't give you the cake. It's the person baking it. So same idea. So the problem is, like I said, I don't sit down and calculate exactly how many hours I spend making this. So I don't actually know. But I'm going to make kind of a rough estimation of that. So if I look at my Ravelry, and I know that I started around mid-November of 2023 and I finished around mid-February of 2024. So roughly 3 months. So let's say 3 months is about 13 weeks. And I think I worked on it almost every day, roughly. Again, I'm not entirely sure. So let's just say an average of 2 hours every single day. So like 7 days a week, 2 hours a day. For 13 weeks, that equals 182 hours. And I'm going to add an extra 5 hours to that because I also spend a lot of time steeking, weaving ends, and blocking this piece. So again, all the details of how I actually did it, you can watch that video. But for the sake of argument, that equals 187 hours. And I'm going to round that up to 200 hours because honestly, I think it was more than 187 because like sometimes I needed more than 2 hours, and this one did take a lot of work. One single sweater vest. So already you can see that's a lot of time. That's a lot of time and effort put into a single piece. So I could never make like so many of these because it's just not possible. But let's say that I want to sell this one piece. So I want to calculate how much would I charge for 200 hours of my time and effort and work and skill. Now, if I were to pay myself minimum wage, not even like make a ton, just minimum wage in the state of New York where I live, that is $16.50 as of today. So if we multiply $16.50 by 200, that gives us around $3,300 worth of just work. Let's add the $50 to that, the $50 for materials. So that's a total of $3,350 just for the materials and the work, the hours put into making this one sweater vest. And that's without adding profit, because I know you guys know that when you buy something, like anything that you're wearing, there's obviously an extra, there has to be a profit of like making over it. So that would be the baseline, and making like almost zero profit of selling this one single vest. And I honestly don't know anyone who would pay that. In fact, if I actually wanted to sell this for real, I don't think I could price it that way. I would have to lower the amount of money that I'm giving myself for my hours of work. And let's say I would have to, I think, lower it at least as like $5 per hour, and it would still be over $1,000 of work and materials. And I would pay myself like so much less than minimum wage. And I still think people would not pay $1,000, like regular people that I could sell to. I don't know that they would pay $1,000 for it, but it's worth way more than that. So a society that is expecting $20 for a sweater made very cheap, fast fashion, would maybe not pay that price. And I don't blame them. Like, things are expensive. Who has the money to spend that much in a single garment? Like, do you actually want it that much, is what I would say. And in my case, the response is yes, because technically I spent my own time and effort into making this, and it exists, and I have it, and I gifted it to my husband, and I know he appreciates it, and I hope it becomes an heirloom and it stays with our family for years to come. But that's what I mean with priceless. Like, it's something that I made, and that I could never put a real price to it, because if I did, I don't think that you guys would pay it, or anyone, really. So those are the reasons why I don't like to even attempt to sell my knitting. Like I said, I respect those who do. It's not easy to turn something into a business. And honestly, that's why I prefer just instead creating community, sharing the projects so you can see how I make things. And if you want to try to make them yourself, you can. Making patterns so I can come up with ideas of, things that I would like to wear, and then share them with you so that you can wear them as well. And that is way, way cheaper. My patterns are usually less than what it costs to buy a coffee. So I prefer to do it that way. And even then, I know that at any point I could just say, I don't want to do this anymore. I just want to keep knitting on my own in my living room. And that is totally fine. So that's what you're doing. Don't ever feel pressure to try to make a business out of something that you enjoy, unless you really want to do it. It's okay to do something just because you find joy in it. And for me, the joy of knitting is knitting. So I will continue to do so, and I will continue to share with you. If you like what I share, my thoughts on knitting, my projects, my favorite knitting patterns, and all of that stuff, you can support me for free. All you gotta do is subscribe, like, maybe leave a comment, tell me what you think about selling or not selling your knits, and that will allow me to continue to make more of these videos. Because even though I make very little from them, what I make usually goes back into my projects. I use it to buy the yarn that I will use for more other projects and stuff like that, or buy equipment. So that's how I like to see this. It's like a gift to you guys, and you give back that way. And so that is what I prefer to do. I will be posting more soon, and I will see you on the next one. Happy knitting.